Hey, this is David. Like many other cinematographers out there, I think I spend just a little bit too much time trying to dream up a perfect yet minimalist camera kit. And so I end up getting suckered into accessories and cameras that try to purport that dream maybe just a little bit too easily. I often see on manufacturers' websites such a clean and ideal looking kit, but when I actually get my hands on the accessories or products, I always end up with these Frankenstein's cameras to actually get any practical use out of them. If that statement hits just a little bit too close to home for you, today I want to talk about a little piece of kit that's been helping me keep my cinema rig a little bit more minimalist lately. The ACCSOON M1 is an HDMI to USB-C video adapter, which might not sound that interesting at first, but in actuality, it's a very elegant and minimalist solution to both power and monitor your camera from a small accessory like this using a smartphone. While the ACCSOON M1 may look like a phone clamp on the end of a selfie stick, it takes MPF batteries for power and hopefully has a nice battery life indicator on the side with two DC outs marked 7.2 to 8.4 volts. You also get an HDMI in, and finally a USB-C port to power and transmit your camera signal to an Android device, with the whole accessory supporting phones between 65mm and 90mm. You also get a standard quarter 20 socket on the bottom and a cold shoe on top. And all of this in a very similar size package to one of ACCSOON's other budget-friendly accessories, the CINEEYE AIR wireless video transmitter. While these two accessories are somewhat different, one being wired and one being wireless, they are in a similar class of product and a similar price range and appeal to a similar audience. That being said, I can't help but feel that the M1 is exactly what I wanted when I picked up the CINEEYE AIR a few years ago, and maybe even a little bit extra. When it comes to video production, some of the most basic needs beyond a camera and lens would be a good way to monitor what you're recording and a good way to power the whole setup. The CINEEYE AIR was a decent way to get a video feed onto a phone or tablet, and although it might look very minimalist on its own, in my experience it pretty much required its own power source, as well as a separate mounting solution for a phone or tablet, which in turn also probably needed its own power solution, which resulted in quite the tangled mess of cables and accessories when I was really aiming for more of a minimalist camera rig. The M1 on the other hand simplifies a lot of this by being both the hub that powers and transmits video all in one. Of course you lose wireless functionality, as well as the capability to monitor on a secondary device, but I think what you gain in simplicity and usability is significant. With a single MPF battery, the M1 can transmit video to a smartphone and optionally charge it, but it can also provide power to a camera and possibly one other accessory via the DC out. So on paper, it does sound like the perfect minimalist solution along with a smartphone to take a very basic camera rig and make it much more functional. But what is it like in actual use? Well, for me, my Blackmagic Pocket 4K rig went from something looking like this to something more like this. While these two rigs do offer very similar functionality, I found that the slimmed down M1 version is a lot better when it comes to run and gun situations, and it's a lot less fiddly on set compared to the CINEEYE AIR. Now it doesn't go as far as to make the Pocket 4K actually pocketable, but with the M1 covering jobs for several other commonly used accessories, you can really lighten your load, and I find myself taking a much smaller bag than before, but the quality of video that I take remains the same. And with a few MPF batteries and the phone I already carry daily, it's much easier to see myself just taking the Pocket 4K and enjoying filming whenever inspiration strikes. And I go as far as to say that this kind of accessory actually makes the original Blackmagic Pocket actually pocketable and more functional, so get subscribed to see a future video on that. In line with ACCSOON's other video transmission accessories, as well as similar accessories from other companies, through an app you not only get the ability to monitor your camera's feed, but you also get helpful video functionality like histograms and focus peaking. But I did have to mention, as the owner of a wider aspect phone, as well as Anamorphic enthusiast, disappointingly, that while you can view a variety of D-squeeze ratios through the app, the image that you get is much smaller, cropped on all sides. This is a pretty common issue I find with similar entry-level accessories, but with so many new anamorphics hitting the market these days, I hope it's something that can be fixed later with a software update to get a better viewing experience for those that enjoy using anamorphics. But thankfully, one complaint I did have with the CINEEYE AIR is resolved on the M1. Audio monitoring via the connected Android device's headphone jack or speakers is now available. On cameras like the one I'm using right now, the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, this might not seem like a huge deal, but for entry to mid-level mirrorless cameras from the likes of Fuji or Canon that say lack a headphone jack or the ability to view LUTs or focus peaking, for $99 US and presumably the phone that you already own, this can make your camera function much more like a pro or flagship model, which is pretty amazing. Not to mention that a lot of these budget cameras lack flip-out screens, and even those that do can benefit from a much larger 5, 6, or 7-inch display that we see on phones these days. While I don't do that much vlogging, I have enjoyed the simpler process of using the M1 to monitor and power my camera for some recent filming and YouTube videos. And while the M1 doesn't have convenient wireless capabilities, I found that using a longer HDMI cable for monitoring, say, filming yourself or some top-down footage, makes it a lot more versatile. If you do feel so compelled, I'm sure you could rig up something that's wireless by using 2 receivers from another manufacturer, but that kind of setup would probably introduce some latency, which may be a deal breaker for many situations, as there is already some perceivable lag to begin with. And while we're talking about some of the negative aspects of the M1, I found it to be a lot more plasticky than you would find on similar products like the CINEEYE Air. In normal use cases, it's probably fine, but I actually tried this while cycling recently on a bike-mounted setup to monitor my original Blackmagic Pocket, and it didn't instill confidence. In fact, with enough bumps, I did have a battery come loose in one instance, and in general I feel that the mechanics for holding the battery in place is a little flimsy, and I much prefer other NPF battery mounting designs that I've seen on other products. So for those that were interested in using the ACCSOON M1 in creative filming situations, I'd highly recommend finding a way to secure the battery to the back of it, but I do have to admit, especially from that experience cycling with it, the size and ability to use a phone is very appealing for these unique filming situations, especially for those that find themselves traveling frequently. And in those situations, when it just works, it can be a fantastic and really cool gadget. But really, like any kind of mirroring software, or any kind of software layer that connects 2 pieces of hardware, there can be seemingly random and difficult to diagnose problems. I've had everything from glitchy images to just a black screen, and in some circumstances, I've had to restart my phone twice just to get an image to appear properly. I'm using it to monitor my camera right now, and during this recording session, it just went black on me twice for no apparent reason, which can be pretty annoying for the normal user and is completely unacceptable for professional circumstances. And this is all with the included USB-C cable, as well as a HDMI cable I've been using for years, so I assume that the issue is something more software related. Another little annoyance that comes up every so often is that the clamp is positioned in a place where most volume rocker buttons will be, so every so often as I'm adjusting the phone for viewing, the sound of my camera will come out of the speakers of the phone, which can be very bad in some circumstances. Even though this is a wired connection, unlike an HDMI monitor, you have many more points of failure in the form of the USB-C cable, HDMI cable, the software on the phone, or the phone itself, any of which malfunctioning could leave you stranded without a monitor. So at the end of the day, this might not be the perfect monitoring solution, or rather this kind of accessory with a smartphone isn't necessarily going to be the most accurate, viewable, or reliable monitor for important work situations. This has just enough jank and quirks that I don't want to fiddle with it on a client project. Those looking for a professional solution can easily rig up something similar with a Ninja or Shinobi without adding significant bulk or weight, but for a fraction of that cost and the ability to bring what you already own in the form of an Android phone, I do have to admit that this little thing is a great way to get a taste of pro-level features on the camera you already own, and in turn get more serious about filmmaking without too much investment. Even for seasoned professionals, I can see a situation where the M1 and maybe this little sunshade can go a long way for the right project. And it's definitely one of the only pieces of kit that lives up to its minimalist advertising, for which I have to commend ACCSOON. The M1 also has live streaming capabilities, which I really haven't dived into, but again, I think this could be a great entry-level solution for those to bring the equipment they already own and get started doing something that they might otherwise need bigger, more expensive equipment for. For what the ACCSOON M1 has to offer, especially at this price point, I think any filmmaker, new or experienced, that owns an Android smartphone should seriously consider picking one of these up. Anyways, I'm David, I hope you liked the video, and I'll be back with more soon. Thanks.